On the show today, filling in for Mike, Sixers Adam returns again to the Ricky as we talk about the Sixers' second win in a row, this time over the Pacers. Rather comfortable, I might say. We got even more emails about Jared McCain. We'll talk about that. Sixers Adam wrote a little bit about whether Nick Nurse could be on the hot seat. We will talk about that. And what does the Sixers' future look like compared to the rest of the NBA? Nate Silver and a couple of his other writers ranked the future rankings of the NBA teams. We'll let you know where the Sixers came in. The Rights Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS. Brought to you by Adam Ksebe, the official realtor of the Ricky, 302-864-8643. That's a cell. Or buyindelaware.com. BodyBio, get 20% off any BodyBio order with code August at bodybio.com. Briggs Auction, the official auction of the Ricky at briggsauction.com. And Surfside Iced Tea and Vodka, the official canned cocktail of the Ricky. So we were at Fly the Process this past weekend, and we were at the pregame party, and I was looking around what everybody was drinking. It was all fucking Surfsides. All Surfsides. This one older gentleman had never had a Surfside. He and his wife, who were on the trip, were retired, traveling around the country. He was drinking the strawberry lemonade. He was like, you know what? This is excellent. I said, I know it is. Got to meet some of the Surfside folks from down there in Louisiana. They have new flavors coming out, the Surfside blueberry lemonade and vodka, and then the half and half variety 8-pack, which is half and half in vodka, so that's iced tea and lemonade, raspberry half and half, mango half and half, blackberry half and half, all have 2 grams of sugar, all have 100 calories. None of them have any bubbles, because why would they? Because it is iced tea and lemonade, and neither one of them should have bubbles. You can get it wherever you get your canned cocktails. You can, if you can't find it, go to drinksurfside.com. You got to be 21. Please enjoy it responsibly. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who isn't Mike, but he sure does hate open threes. That is one. Sixers Adam. Welcome, Sixers.
Hello.
Adam.
Hello.
How are you, buddy?
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
I'm good.
Thanks for doing it, pal. This is an advantage to you not traveling for the away games, is that you can write your story and then you could do the pod with us right afterwards. I appreciate you filling in, buddy.
Exactly. Yeah, I could have been traveling for all these games, but I figured in case you ever need me to fill in for Mike, I should just stay in the area. And so finally, 60 home games later, and to me away games later, and to me working at Philly Voice, finally you guys asked me.
Yeah. So Mike Mike was busy with work. Originally we were supposed to do Thursday night, but I will be in Clearwater with my work on Thursday night, so we decided to do the pod tonight, and Sixers Adam could fill in. Appreciate you, Sixers Adam. So Sixers win 135-114 over the Pacers in what, if you watch the first quarter, I was like, oh no, it's going to be one of these, but they settled in and played pretty well. I like the biggest takeaway from me over the last 2 games is it just seems, I don't know if it was the Pelicans game being so horrible, but it seems like something woke Maxey up a little bit, who had been in a bit of a malaise, and I think we all figured it was due to minutes or something, but he has looked like a new guy the last couple of games, I think.
Yeah, I just wrote in my game story at Philly Voice that he looks refreshed almost.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how that could be possible physically, given the workload that he's had to shoulder all year. So I would certainly imagine it's more of a emotional, spiritual sort of thing.
Yeah.
They really got punched in the mouth in that Pelicans game. and it was a really embarrassing loss, and a string of obviously a few pretty brutal losses that they had in that stretch there. So maybe that was just a wake-up call that they needed. They've had, some favorable circumstances where Minnesota was without their two centers and they basically had nobody inside. Even Julius Randle was sick during that game, we found out afterwards. And then, the Pacers are begging anybody to beat them so they can try to keep their pick. But they played really well. Obviously, Joel being back and looking good is quite important. But yeah, I sort of have had the same thought on Tyrese, is that he looks rejuvenated in some way right now over these last couple games. And I don't think we're just over indexing that, like, more of his shots are going in and we're reacting to that. Like, I think when you watch him play, there's more decisiveness. There's more just sort of like the free flowing nature of the way that he was so good early in the season, where all these buckets were just sort of coming naturally to him. Felt like he really, for maybe 6 weeks, has had to work for so many more of his baskets. And these last couple of games, it felt much more like the early season Maxey.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned like over-indexing on made shots. He shot 2 of 8 from 3 tonight, so it wasn't. And the Minnesota game, I think the Sixers shot like 56% on 3, but they didn't tonight. They shot 28%. And again, the Pacers are trying to lose. We're not over-celebrating it. I really don't think it's about shots going in. To some extent, it is. And the thing for Maxey is he never looks tired. I never think he looks tired physically, even when he's worked a lot of minutes. It feels like when he is tired, he wears his frustration on his face. And there was a moment during the Pelicans game where he thought he got fouled and ended up turning it over. I don't know if he got a shot blocked or ended up getting turned over. And he just laid on the court while the Pelicans got a fast break the other way and just laid there the whole time. And I think it's indicative of, it's so weird because he's such a positive guy and such a positive force. And it doesn't mean that he can't be frustrated, but it does seem to me that when he is playing poorly, there's almost like a body language thing that you can read, that there's like he's irritated or he's frustrated. And that's when the sort of lazy pass turnovers happen. It's when the sort of, you don't even know what he's doing on offense. He's always moving quickly, but I think it's more of a body language thing to me. And it's been a far more confident, just sort of decisive Maxey over the last couple of games.
Yeah, decisive, I think, is the most important word there. And I think, that sort of demeanor where he doesn't look quite as much like he's enjoying the moment as usual. I think we got introduced to that last year, and that's pretty much all we saw last year, aside from there's one stretch, and I forget if it was December or January last year, that he really liked the way that they were playing and he was playing, and he's actually talked to me about that since. But I think almost like he's always tired because he's playing a million minutes. He's playing more than anybody in the NBA. Last time I checked the distance traveled leaders, he was the leader in distance traveled in the league, I think both per game and total. He's always tired, but I think when he's in the right frame of mind, he's able to just block that out and just focus on the next play. And I think once things start sort of snowballing in a negative way, then he'll let it creep into his mind how much he's playing, and then those legs feel a little heavier. That's just, I haven't heard him say that or talk to him about that, but that's just my impression from watching him. Because I think when there's a good tone that he has set for himself and that has been set for him, he gets into a role like this one where, maybe that second stretch where Joel was off the floor tonight in the third quarter, where he really went nuts with Bona and a few other guys out there. Maybe aside from that one, there was no individual stretch in this game where it was like, oh, Maxey has single-handedly taken over the game for these 6 minutes. He's just good, minute in, minute out. And then you look at the box score, and it's 32, 9, and 8 on 22 shots.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he was great. That one, it wasn't even Maxey like. It's interesting. He's great getting to the rim. He's very explosive. You don't think of him as a handles guy, right? Or as like a crafty guy. But that one drive and dish to Embiid, it almost felt like he was a different guy. Like he was so comfortable, so decisive, and felt so good. It was, I don't even know that I've ever seen Maxey.
It was like a heat check.
Yes. Yeah. Like a heat check pass. Like, I'm going to dribble it this way, this way, this way. I'm going to dish it off. And it was, Mike hates talking about point guard versus not point guard. I think it's a real thing, but it was a real just sort of it was a real floor general point guardy sort of play, I thought.
Yeah, and I think this was one of his better games that I can recall over the last couple months on that front. And the same for Embiid. And I think when Embiid is getting touches and drawing to and making decisive passes with the ball, and the defense is rotating, Maxey oftentimes can attack a closeout and drop it off to someone like Barlow in the dunker or wherever. And I think when Joel is passing and making quick decisions, again, I talk about like setting the tone. I think it sets a good tone for everybody to do the same, including Maxey.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about Embiid because this was his first game back since February 7th, 2.5 weeks. And I know a week in there was the All-Star break, but when you think about the fact they didn't play the 2 games after the All-Star break, it's still, even if there were games in there, you assume he wouldn't have played in those games.
It was
either.
18 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was it was a 2.5 week break, and it would have been a 2.5 week break even if there wasn't an All-Star break in the middle of it. So, and like I don't want to talk about the injury too much. I go back and forth because on one, it's a little frustrating to not know what the hell's going on with the right knee and then where the shin thing came from, all that. But then as well, you also think to yourself, well, he went for basically 6 weeks straight and you knew there was a 2-week knee thing coming at some point. So it came and he came back. He looked good. He had 27 points in 26 minutes. Looked good offensively. I think like worth noting that I seem to remember the beginning of the second quarter, they went on a run without him on the floor. I think it was a 17-0 run or 24. And then the third quarter, again, they went on a run with him not on the floor. It really shows the difference between the two Sixers. And I want to be clear that I don't think there's no way they can win playoff series without Joel. Absolutely. But I think tonight was the first time the last 2 games, actually, the first time in a while, we saw a little bit of the early season no Embiid Sixers, because that's what the beginning of the second quarter reminded me of. And it's the only time when you have those guys on the floor that you even have a chance of the Nick Nurse defense thing working. Like the scramble around, switch everything, try to make steals. And I thought there were 2 spots in the game that it worked. And I just keep thinking ahead into the playoffs is that I was looking at Embiid's on-off splits for this year. And defensively, points per 100 possessions, I think they're only a point better with him on the court than with him off the court. It's by far the closest it's ever been in his career. And I wonder if he has another gear defensively that he's just not doing during the regular season that we might see in the playoff, because I think it's really the only shot they have of winning, of beating a significant team in the playoffs. I'm sorry that there's a lot there, but
yeah, no. So first of all, I agree that I don't think this is a serious playoff team unless he can step up a few notches from where he's at right now defensively. That doesn't mean he has to be peak Embiid on defense, but it's got to be better than this. I lean towards thinking that there's something there just because I've watched enough games this year where for most of the game, he has not looked good defensively. And then it's within 5 points in the last 5 minutes. And he makes a couple plays leaving his feet that he would not have trusted himself to make.
Yeah.
And I think he does so much thinking about, like, he's sort of calculating in his head, like, is leaving my feet on this play worth the risk of what might happen?
Yep.
And I think when a game is sort of hanging in the balance at the end, he doesn't think about it as much and he just plays. And he's shown that he's capable of still, he certainly doesn't look like rookie Embiid in terms of the bounce or anything, but he can at least like jump up and block a shot. And so I think that probably bodes well for, these high leverage, play in or playoff games that they'll hopefully be playing in a couple months from now. But I agree that the version of Embiid that we have mostly seen defensively is probably not going to be able to anchor a defense that wins a playoff series even in this year's East.
Yeah, we'll get to more Embiid in a second. The Rights Ricky Sanchez podcast brought to you by Adam Ksebe. How do you spell Ksebe? Ksebe. Isn't spelled like it sounds at all. He's based out of Long and Foster in Bethany Beach. Adam's specialty, and there's nobody in the world better, is being a realtor for the Delaware beaches. If helping you get into your Delaware Beach dream home, it's Ksebe. There's a lot of realtors out there. I'm not any of the ones that I worked with. I'm just saying, there's a lot of realtors out there that, like, all they really do is you pick out the houses you want online. They show up to let you in, and then they show up at closing. That's not what Ksebe is. He understands that buying a house at the Delaware beaches is going to be competitive. It's going to be fast. You're going to want information. Ksebe is doing the work for you. He'll hustle. You just buy the beach house. And here are the advantages. First of all, you're not going to spend thousands of dollars to rent anybody else's house anymore. Why would you want to do that? What you're going to do is you're going to be able to buy this beautiful house, whether it's in Rehoboth or Lewis or Bethany or Dewey or wherever it is. If you'd like, you can charge other people to stay there. Those people end up paying your mortgage, and you have a place to go to with your family and your friends, whether it be the summer, long weekend during the fall, maybe around the holidays. Lewis is actually beautiful during the holidays. Ksebe can help you make it happen. If you've never been to the Delaware beaches, first of all, they're beautiful. I don't know if you've been there, but they're beautiful. Property tax in Delaware beaches, some of the lowest in the country. Ksebe sent me one the other day. It was a condo on the beach in Dewey. I think it was like $600,000, and the property taxes were about $1,000 for the whole year, for the whole fucking year. And then you think about the rental income, $60,000 a year. They're basically paying your mortgage. You have an investment property, and you have your vacation house. The only way that Ksebe can help you, though, is if you reach out to him. It's the only way. Here is his direct cell, 302-864-8643. That is 302-864-8643. Or you can go to buyindelaware.com. That is Adam Ksebe, the official realtor of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast on Embiid. But all that said about defense, offense, it is. I think it's pretty amazing that he is this good considering how limited physically he is. And it's not like he's hobbling around there, but compared to how he's been even at his best like 2 years ago, the mid-range is crazy. And it really seems like to me offensively that everything has just, I remember this with Peyton Manning at a point where he had just figured everything out. And physically, he didn't have the arm strength anymore, but he knew how everything worked. And it seems like offensively, everything has slowed down for Embiid, and the mid-range is probably as good as it's ever been. And that he's really just almost scoring with his mind, if that makes any sense. Like when he is in a zone, it's really unreal how good he is offensively. And I mentioned points per possession defensively, where it's not that much better. I think they're like +9 or +10 with him on the court as opposed to not on the court offensively. It's just pretty sick how good he is offensively right now.
Yeah, once he figured out the passing stuff and like what to do as far as quick passes when they double him, it was basically over for anybody trying to guard him, because then you just don't have it. It's a catch-22. You don't have a good option. And yeah, I sort of agree with the way I described it during the year after the MVP, where he was playing even better before the meniscus. I kept describing it as that he had mastered basketball, because it just seemed inconceivable that any coverage or player was going to stop him. Like, I think that might have been the year that they played Minnesota and Gobert was on him and he scored 50. And obviously at the 70 on Wembanyama. And it just felt like no matter what you do, he's going to kill you. Yep. Now he's obviously not, he doesn't move the same way. So there's some limitations, but again, 18 days not playing in a game, you just drop him in. And, I think we've had 3 more Pacers games than we needed to know that Jay Huff can't guard him. But like a lot of teams in the NBA have centers that are the size of Jay Huff, and Joel Embiid's a lot bigger and stronger and more skilled. It's just remarkable how easily he can just walk into 27 points in 26 minutes in his first game in 2.5 weeks. Yeah. When, like, I didn't think he was moving as great as he was, 3 weeks ago, when he was in this long stretch of over a month without any unplanned absences and everything like that.
He looked pretty gassed after that first run out there too. That's the other thing that happens with Embiid.
Right.
He loses fitness. Yeah.
Yeah. And they used him looked like Nick was using him in 8-minute stints. First 8 minutes of the first quarter, last 8 minutes of the half, first 8 minutes of the third quarter. And then if it were close, I think he would have played the last 8 minutes of the game. But he was great. And I thought his early minutes were awesome, because he's usually either awesome or terrible in these return games from lengthy absences. And in the last couple of years, it's been more of the bad ones than the good ones. But this was obviously a great one. And sometimes he just looks too timid and he's like trying to feel out his way into the game, sort of like opening night in Boston, where he just looked like a fish out of water. He didn't know exactly what was going on. Everything was moving too fast for him. Here, I thought in this Pacers game, he set the tone early with like drawing two, making the right read. I think he had 3 assists in the first like 5 or 6 minutes of the game. Could have had a fourth, but Barlow got fouled. I thought they were just great minutes from him. About as encouraging as I think you could have hoped for, given how long he was off. Mm-hmm. Again, understanding the quality of opponent, both in terms of team and individual matchup. But a lot of these games are going to be against teams like this throughout the rest of the year. I think between March 1st and the end of the year, I think 8 of their games are against teams that are unquestionably tanking, and probably a few more against teams that are not necessarily tanking but are bad. Every game matters. A couple of years ago, they were in the play-in because of a 3-way tie for the 5th seed that they lost.
Yeah,
and then they had to play an awesome Knicks team that, they might have beaten whoever was, the 4 seed that year. I don't remember who it was. All these games matter, and Orlando, I think, is a game back of them now. So even when it feels like, it's what they should have done. Like, how many games have we seen over the years where the Sixers should have won handily and blew it? It's at least something right now.
Well, and just for the playoffs, I would just rather see them play a series that they have a chance to win so they can play another series than not. And the difference between playing, like getting to play Toronto or something as opposed to Cleveland or Boston or New York or Detroit, would be a huge win if they could get in position to do that. I know Mike's not here. The amount of open threes that the Sixers give up is fantastic.
It was bad. It was super bad early.
I counted 9 in the first quarter. 9 in the first quarter. They not all makes, but before we get to Edgecombe and then a quick thing on Grimes, who had another pretty good game, I thought too, which is a good sign. So Dominic Barlow had 3 rebounds, and I was asking Beckett about this today because for the last month, I've been looking at his defensive rebound rate. It's right around 10%, 11%. For context, it's the same as Kelly Oubre. Now his offensive rebound rate is very high. I think it's like 80th percentile or something. But defensively, it's 9th percentile. I'm glad that he can do the things offensively that he can do that we didn't think he could do at the beginning of the year when he was just hustle guy. I feel like they need more hustle guy out of Dominic Barlow. It's nice that he can do the things offensively that he can do. They're so bad defensive rebounding. I wonder if it's in there somewhere. You look throughout his career, he's never been particularly good at it. And maybe it just felt that way at the beginning of the year because he looked like he was giving more effort than everybody else. I wonder. I don't think the best lineups have Dominic Barlow in them right now. I think he's a rotation player. He's good, but I just wonder sometimes what he's giving you out there. Again, I'm glad they signed him to the contract, and I think there's a good player in there somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out what he's given them when he's out on the floor, and it doesn't feel like it's been too much.
Yeah, and we texted about this, I think, yesterday.
I looked
at some of the.
I had a melt. I was. Why does Dominic? I think my text was, "Why does Dominic Barlow always have 3 rebounds?" And he had 3 rebounds
something like that.
Tonight.
Yeah. So I looked earlier today at some of the on-off stuff, and so what my hypothesis to you, which I texted you, was that his rebounding has gone down because early in the season, Embiid was so limited as a rebounder that Barlow had to do all that stuff. Now Embiid, is not like an elite rebounder or anything close to it, but is at least carrying some weight there. When I looked at a bunch of the different on-off stuff, it actually seemed more to me like his rebounding numbers have suffered because he's played with Drummond so much. And I think it'll be interesting, if Joel, I think it was per 75 possessions, it was 8.5 rebounds without Drummond on the floor and 5.5 or 6 with him, which is a bigger difference than the on-off stuff with Joel was. I'm not saying that it's not a thing because I think it is. I think all year his offensive rebounding rate and defensive rebounding rate have seemed smaller than it feels like when you watch, because I think so many of his defensive rebounds are like contested in a crowd. He jumps up and reaches up above three different guys and gets it. And so many of the offensive rebounds lead directly to points because he's so good at finding open shooters or just going back up with it. So I think it's always probably going to not look quite as good like on his basketball reference page as it seems when you watch the games. But I think your point is valid, and I don't disagree that there's been less of it. I do think their best lineup recently has been with Oubre at the 4, and it was their best lineup early in the season. And that's especially, remember, Barlow missed like 2 weeks with that weird arm thing.
Oh yeah.
He only played the first like 6 quarters of the season before he missed, I want to say, like 8 or 9 games. And they weren't starting Oubre at the 4, but it was their best lineup by far with Maxey, VJ, Q, Oubre, and then basically anyone at center. That's basically the only lineup that Andre Drummond is still like a plus in right now. And it kind of makes sense because the lineup that small needs his rebounding. So I agree that Dom is not in their best lineups right now. I think clearly needs to be someone that's playing and probably, for at least for as long as Paul George is suspended, is playing more of the power forward minutes than anybody else is. But I think it makes sense on a night like tonight where, you know, he's just not really impacting the game. You just look at other guys like Trendon surprisingly gave them some nice minutes in a rotation cameo tonight. They didn't go up to Oubre at the 4 much. Jabari's minutes were meh at best. But they have a lot of different types of guys there. Jabari and Dom are sort of more similar than anybody else because they check and don't check the same boxes, even if they do it in different ways.
Yeah.
But I agree anyways that Dom is not part of their best lineups right now. But I do think in general, when you have Joel out there, he gives you the best mix of stuff next to Joel because of the guys that are viable with him offensively. He gives you the best mix of can guard up a little bit, can switch on the perimeter, can rebound, revives possessions, has a really good rapport with Joel on the sort of high-low passing stuff and the cuts, DHO guy for Maxey. So I hear you and I don't disagree with you, but I think the good still pretty clearly outweighs the bad with him.
Yeah, for sure. And he's been a nice find, and he's more skilled than I would have imagined.
Yeah.
He might need to learn to be a real player. That corner 3 might actually just have to develop, because I don't know that he's ever going to be a high level rebounder. I don't know if he's ever going to be like a psycho rebounder out there. A nice game for Edgecombe as well. Like his nice games are always the same in that you don't really. His usage is never particularly high. He always just seems to make a quick decision with the ball and either drive and hit one of those middies or a 3. And but it was a nice game offensively from him tonight too.
Yeah, I think the decisiveness is the biggest thing, and that's hard to find in a 20-year-old rookie guard who's starting and playing 35 minutes a game on a team that's been above 500 the entire season. And I think he's one of a bunch of guys who, when Joel goes from out of the game to in the game, goes from probably underqualified for his role to overqualified. Like I think about Tyrese, who I think we'd all agree that when Joel was not playing, Tyrese is probably not equipped to take 30 shots a game and play 40 minutes and be in the middle of like a heliocentric offense. But when Joel is in there, Tyrese is way overqualified to be like a number 2 who utilizes the gravity of someone like Joel.
Yeah.
And I think VJ's sort of in the same boat where you knock his role down a notch or 2. And all of a sudden you have a guy who, instead of like, you have to hope that he can fill those shoes tonight, it seems like a pretty safe bet. And then every now and then you get nights like this where he's just punching gaps and he hits a couple threes. Weird. 2 threes that went in and then 2 threes that airballed, I believe, for VJ. But yeah, he was great tonight. It's just remarkable. 20-year-old rookie guard who I would argue, not that he's been perfect on either end, but has generally been fine on offense and good on defense. That's usually not something you get from a rookie guard, let alone at 20 years old. So, I mean, it's another night. It's what he does.
If you could trade him for Knipple right now, would you do it?
Ooh.
It's a tough question, isn't it?
It's a hard question.
Yeah.
Would you?
I just want to be happy with what we have. someone texted me that doesn't live here, that is a Sixers fan. And he said, are Sixers fans disappointed that they don't have Knipple and they do have VJ? And I said, no. I mean, they're not. People don't think about it at all. But if they thought about it a little bit, they may think to themselves, I think if they had gotten Knipple, we would have convinced ourselves we got the second best player in the draft. I think, and I think that's an easy thing to do. I think the only, not the only case for it, but the case for it is you already know Knipple has one elite skill and you don't know if VJ is going to have any. Now, you could talk yourself into those things happening, and physically, he's a better athlete than Knipple is. Not like Knipple's like a bad athlete, by the way. Like he's a good one. I think I don't even know. It's
hard.
It's a tough one.
It feels too early to call for me. And I was a con guy before the draft. Like I didn't watch enough of either guy where I felt like I could really like stamp my name on it. But I would have picked Con at the time. But I don't think that anyone should look at the fact that Con has been decidedly better than him in the NBA this year. Yeah. And I don't think anybody should look at that and say the Sixers whiffed here or be disappointed. No. I mean, this is more than enough to be excited about a number 3 overall pick, particularly, I think, again, just the like athletic dynamic of it all in tandem with Maxey is so tantalizing and exciting. But it would also be exciting to have like one of the 3 best shooters in the league as a rookie. So I don't know. I don't know which one I'd rather have for the Sixers or in general. I would say, like, if you pulled 100 NBA executives that don't work for the Sixers or Hornets, I think there would probably be more Con voters than people here realize. Like, I think it's probably seen as a toss-up at best from a national perspective. But yeah, I mean, they're both awesome. They're both ridiculously good players. Obviously, Flag is too, and Harper doesn't have to do as much because they have Fox and Castle, but Harper's going to be awesome also.
The Rice to Ricky Sanchez podcast. Speaking of awesome, the Rice to Ricky Sanchez podcast brought to you by Body Bio. Body Bio, supplement company out of Jersey, grown by leaps and bounds since they started advertising on the Ricky. I'm not saying it's a one-for-one thing. It's certainly not what I'm saying, but very, very proud of our friends at Body Bio. Body Bio is I think for things that you're going to put into your body that is supposed to make you healthier, like supplements that Body Bio sells, quality control is incredibly important. And I've said this a bunch of times, but I just want to paint the picture to you. You walk into a pharmacy, you see the wall of supplements. Half of them are covered in dust. How long have they been there? Are the products inside those bottles oxidized? And there's just such big companies in every single drugstore you see. Is there any way that they can keep an eye on quality like Body Bio does? The answer is absolutely not. Every batch of every product that Body Bio sends out goes through their quality control standards, and if it doesn't match it, it does not go out. What products? Well, we've talked about a bunch of them. We believe in all of them. E-Light is the core product. It's the first one we ever talked about on the Ricky. It's for your hydration, being hydrated, not just about water, right? About electrolytes. It's pure electrolytes. Just put a little in your water. I had this cramping problem in my feet, in my calves. I started using E-Light. It went away. No sugar, no artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no nothing. There's so many of them. Butyrate that Mike uses, a gut supplement. If you can only use one gut supplement, butyrate. Recently, we've talked about Remineralize. Minerals, something you used to get out of your food and your water. Don't get it anymore because you filter your water. And the land that your food comes out of has been over-farmed and stripped of all of its minerals. All Remineralize does, they go to dried salt beds in Utah. They process it just a little bit. They turn it into liquid form. You put a little bit in your drink, gives you all the minerals you need for the day. Go to bodybio.com, buy any of their products in any quantity, and use code August and get 20% off your order. That is bodybio.com, promo code August for 20% off your order. Okay, a couple other quick things, and then we'll get on to the next thing from the game. Another nice game from Grimes, and is going to be super necessary because when any one of the Sixers guards is not playing well, they seem like they don't have any good guards. And when all 3 of them are playing well, it seems like there's just such a huge difference between two of the three of them playing well and all three of them playing well. And Grimes is really the key to that, because his energy, shooting, and defense off the bench is massive. And numbers don't like jump at you tonight, but he was good again.
He was good.
Yeah.
He was good. Yeah. I think all 4 games out of the break, he's been good early, which is a nice sign. And I think these last 2, he's been good sort of wire to wire. And it's wild, the discrepancy between how good he was the first, 5 weeks of the season, where he was one of the top 6 men of the year candidates. He's hitting all these clutch shots. He's closing most of the games in these awesome 3-guard lineups. And then basically from like December to February, like it was almost every game was like nothing or worse. I think before this recent stretch, he was down to like 35% from 3, and he was 1 of 4 tonight. So that's not going up based on this one. I'm sure it will eventually, because he's a better shooter than that. But yeah, they just need more pop off the bench. They need more secondary scoring, particularly like everybody points to the McCain thing and how there's not any safety net behind Grimes. And that is true. But to me, the bigger thing is not having Paul George for the better part of 2 months. You need guys that, it's not like Paul George was scoring 30 points, but even the 19 points that Paul George gave you pretty seamlessly, you got to replace those somewhere. And Grimes is the most logical guy to do it. I thought these have been a couple of pretty encouraging games for Q, considering how discouraging he was for a couple months. So we'll see it. Like, I still think the bad has outweighed the good in terms of what I expected from him this year. But this is a good start towards maybe building his value back up. And he needs a good last couple of months here, because he's hitting unrestricted free agency, and we all know what happened last summer.
And last thing, I love him to death. And even though he was the Jared McCain replacement, I still love Campaign. He has not had a good start to the Sixers run. He's missing every shot. Yeah, he's been rough, man. He's been really rough.
Yeah, and I'm not like closing the book on him yet, because I do think there's a really useful like 4th NBA guard in there. That's basically what he was when he was here last time, and I thought he was wildly underrated here a couple years ago. And maybe this is just a shots not going in situation. He's had a crazy couple weeks. He was out for a game in Serbia, and he was sitting on the bench, and his agent called him and told him he might want to start packing his bags because the Sixers were interested. And then he flew, I think, to Amsterdam, and then from there to here, and then immediately goes on this 3 games and 4 nights trip on the road. It's been a very weird time. So I don't want to act as if it's, signed, sealed, delivered, that he's not going to help.
It's okay. He's not going to get mad at you. Relax.
No, I know he's not, but I actually think that he's good. I actually think that he's kind of good.
I like him too.
And I'm just,
I think he's
like,
good
I would continue to play him, because I think once he's more familiarized with everything that they're doing, because he talked about, so even though it's the same coach and a lot of the same assistant coaches, there's a lot different. You're laughing. You think I'm making excuses. I believe this is true, and I think Campaign is good.
No, I think Campaign is good. I wrote a whole thing about why I think Campaign is good. I'm laughing because I'm just laughing that I'm teasing you. I'm laughing at myself.
Okay,
I'm just amusing myself. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think Campaign is a nice player, but I also think when the most impactful player you add to your roster after the trade deadline is someone that was on a team that was losing a bunch in Serbia, you run the risk of him getting here and not being all that good.
Yeah. But that's, I think Mike said it at one point. He said something like, and I understood what he was saying, and I agreed on the whole, that this year he thought Campaign was going to give you the same thing that McCain would have given you the rest of the year. And I was like, Mike, he was playing in Serbia. Like, I just I just want to throw out there that at some point Campaign, who is a decent backup NBA guard, just won't be that anymore. I don't know if it's this year, but it certainly will happen at some point.
Yeah, and I don't think the drop off is necessarily enormous. I think it's larger than I thought at the time, based on the way that Jared has played over the last week or so in Oklahoma City, which we don't have to talk about more to get you all worked up. But with Jared, there is just a spot up shooting element that just provides like such a safe floor for what he's going to be. Where like the shot is completely back with him at this point, which I know you were just talking about for months. Like, you just got to get the shot back, and then this will all make more sense. And now it's back, and it makes more sense. But he's on the Thunder. Yeah. But like, even that would have, even if you want to say he wouldn't have been the shot creator that Campaign is for the rest of this year, there was at least a floor with the 3-point shooting that could fit into any lineup. That would have, at the very least, been helpful in terms of like eating up minutes between now and April, even if he didn't end up being a playoff rotation piece. But yeah, I mean, people listening to this podcast have heard about the McCain thing enough.
Yeah. Well, look, we got an email. This one comes from David. Writes RickySanchez@gmail.com. The McCain quote from last night about, quote, feeling accepted and to be surrounded by, quote, positive energy was just brutal to hear. The whole situation is such an indictment on the Sixers. Beyond the idiocy of the trade itself, that quote alongside McCain's OKC performance speaks volumes about the quality or lack thereof of coaching on the court and leadership in the locker room. Nurse should be embarrassed by McCain playing productive minutes on the Thunder. He really couldn't figure out how to integrate this high upside player into our middling rotation. And sadly, the energy thing ultimately all comes back to Embiid. I love Embiid, but everyone knows how this guy is wired. I don't think it's a coincidence. The vibes nosedived once the team started reforming itself around his presence a few months into the season, and McCain is clearly a vibes guy. I guess I just don't see how the energy of this team ever changes as long as he's a focal point. So these are two separate things. I'll split the Nick Nurse thing because I've been very mad at Rock and Roll Nick about the McCain thing. I do think the beginning of McCain coming back, McCain was well out of sorts in a lot of ways. Physically, he wasn't there. Shot wasn't going down, so on and so forth. But it is worth noting that most of the times when McCain was on the court with the Sixers, and he had played a little bit better over the last week and a half when he was with the Sixers, but most times he looked like he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. There would be almost two versions of Jared. There would be the Jared McCain that is trying not to fit everything into one and ends up playing a 4-minute run where you don't notice him at all. Hardly touches the ball, just sort of out there. And then there's the other one where he'd get the ball and shoot it as soon as he could because he felt like he had to fit everything into 2 minutes. He gets to Oklahoma City, and I fucking swear, Adam, the highlights look just like last season. I'm sure you saw the drive, pass out, relocation, three, like the he's finishing at the rim, he's hitting threes, and like you just think to yourself, what the fuck was, this is me saying, not you saying, I know you got to talk to the guy. What the fuck was Nick Nurse doing? Like, what was he doing? That I am starting to believe, and I know this sounds conspiratorial, but I'm starting to believe that I don't think he ever believed him in the first place, and he was throwing him out there this year because he had to, but I almost think he didn't want it to work. To watch it to work so seamlessly in Oklahoma City and it be so clunky here is, I think the Joel issue is the second one, I think is truly an indictment on Nick Nurse. It has to be.
Yeah, the relocation stuff was what was so mystifying to me. And actually, the last conversation I had with Jared before the trade was largely about that. I wrote a story about his relationship with Steph Curry because he was hopefully going to play against him for the first time. Steph got hurt. He's 0 for 4 on playing against Steph. But I was asking him, like, this was sort of like, to me, the hallmark of your rookie year was you'd give up the ball, and then you would immediately be moving. And something I talked about with him was, to me, that sort of thing is much more Steph Curry-like than like, oh, Trae Young shoots from 30 feet out. Like,
yes,
everybody shoots from 30 feet out. What you're doing off the ball is much more interesting to me in terms of like, oh, this reminds me of Steph Curry. Anyways, he basically talked about like, it's hard to get in the rhythm of the game sometimes. And he understood that, you know, his role last year was an anomaly. I think that was the exact word he used. And we have a lot of good guards, and sometimes it's just hard to get into the flow of it. But, you know, I'm really hoping to reincorporate that. But it felt like, you can't necessarily script those plays, but you can script some level of off-ball movement. And I think it was the Lakers game right before he got, because he got traded right before the Lakers game. So it must have been the Golden State game maybe, or the Clippers, one of those on the West Coast right before the trade. They came out of a quarter break and they just ran him off a screen. And I think it was he ran off a couple screens, right wing, movement three, swished it. And it was like, whoa, where has this been? Like, if they're going to start using this, that adds a whole other dimension to the offense because McCain had been shooting so well in those last few games before the trade. And it just felt like they never really were trying to extract the most value they could from his skill set, which to be clear, like Nick's job is to extract the most value he can from the roster, not any one individual player. But part of that is like you have a really, really, really high level shooter, and now he's got his shot back. Maybe you should incorporate that. And it just felt like they weren't. And clearly it's working right now in Oklahoma City, and it's not like he's running off a million screens every single play, but it's a lot more than what it was here. And so I think it's a fair criticism of Nurse. I really do. I think particularly because immediately after the trade, they lost a few games where it was like, yeah, Sixers could have used one more rotation caliber perimeter guy. Yeah, Sixers could have used a guy to knock down a couple open threes in this game. And the fact that they didn't replace Jared is obviously has been very dispiriting to everybody. So I think it's a completely fair criticism.
Well, I also think I want to write down what I want to say about that is, hold on. Jared, Nick Nurse, one more guard. Oh yeah. Okay. Now I got it. The rights to Ricky Sanchez. Sorry. I just wanted to, I didn't want to lose it, because what happens is I do this and we come back and we lose it. The rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast brought to you by Briggs Auction, based there in Delco, right near Booth's Corner. Briggs Auction is. I always say family owned and operated auction house. You don't care whether it's family owned and operated. They're good people. Love Steve over at Briggs. Love Steph over at Briggs. Now, we don't have CJ here. CJ is working as well as Mike is working. So we don't have the CJ Briggs Item Auction of the Week. However, so download the Briggs Auction app in the App Store or Google Play, or you can just go to the web. I'm going to be honest with you. I am not an app guy for Briggs Auction. I like going to the website. I don't know why, but I check in there like twice a week. There's auctions almost every week now. There's actually 2 going on right now. They both end on Friday. What can you find at Briggs Auction? The real question, my friend, is what can't you find at Briggs Auction? The answer is pretty much nothing. You find everything at Briggs Auction. Are you going to find art there? You are. Are you going to find furniture there? You are. Are you going to find collectibles? Are you going to find electronics? You're going to find everything. You're going to find so much shit you didn't know you needed until you went to Briggs Auction. And then you get to participate in online auctions, which are always fun. I get super competitive. I mentioned there's 2 sales going on right now at Briggs Auction, but one of them especially interesting because it is all it's all from one owner, and it's cameras and electronics. So if you're a camera person, a lot of great cameras and accessories, and also electronics on top of that. Then there's an estate sale as well, which is, there's art and jewelry and all those sorts of things. Great for gifts. Great if you're finishing off a room in your house. You don't feel like waiting 6 months for the couch to come in or a side table. One of a kind items. I think that's what CJ is best at picking out. So go to briggsauction.com, check in there, download the app. If you win one of the auctions, you can pick it up, open pickup on Saturdays, or by appointment during the week, or they can work with you on a shipper. And if you have a bunch of stuff that you can sell that is of value, you got to send an email to info@Briggs Auction. That is Briggs Auction, the official auction of the rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. So some of the people, just to finish up on the McCain thing, some of the people who are saying it's not that big a deal, or will be like, well, the Thunder are missing this guy, this guy, and this guy, and that's why McCain is playing so much. Maybe true, but everybody misses somebody. That's why you want more good players. And the fact that the Thunder are able to continue to win games missing SGA and Jalen Williams and all these guys that they're missing, and one of those guys that is helping them do that is Jared McCain, is an indictment on the Sixers. We don't have that many players. We have 3 guards before we lost campaign, 3 playable guards. So whatever. I don't want to do a whole Jared McCain thing. As far as even though we did a Jared McCain thing, as far as the Embiid thing, I think is right and wrong. I think you're making a bigger deal out of it from an Embiid standpoint with McCain, or McCain's standpoint with Embiid. I do think his energy is tough for the best player on the team to have his particular energy. I think it doesn't look like the energy of a lot of best players on championship teams. And it's just who he is. And you can say, well, Maxey's energy is different, and that's fine, but Embiid is the best player. And like a lot of times, I think to an extent, there's a weird Durant energy too. which was changed a little bit by the fact that Steph Curry was there, and and he is such a great player, and in Golden State they were able to win. But I think there's a weird energy with Kevin Durant too, a little bit, and I think the team oftentimes reflects the energy of its best player, and Embiid's energy is a little weird and not typical for the best player on a title contender. So I think fair to mention,
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's certainly not, and sometimes I wonder if that's why, like, I remember 3 years ago sitting in press conferences and hearing Joel refer to Tyrese as our best player.
Right.
And I was like, now there are some people who hold that opinion. Joel has been saying that for years before it was something anybody actually believed. And I think he probably, I think the perfect world would have been if they had this version of Maxey who was fully ready to sort of take on the vocal leadership stuff back when Embiid was healthy enough to conceivably get through a season and 4 playoff rounds, if that was ever conceivable. And I think, to be fair, I think if he tried to fake it and be the rah-rah guy, I think people would probably see through it, and it wouldn't he wouldn't be able to connect with his teammates that way. And in some ways it's probably for the best that he has continually sort of encouraged Maxey to be that guy. Story in my pin tweet is a lot about that if you want to read about it.
Philly Voice. I'm sorry, I haven't even said it. Sixers Adam, you can read him at Philly Voice. Sixers Adam, you can read him at Philly Voice. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
The 5-year anniversary of the 7 Sixers game that everybody remembers against Denver, Maxey's rookie year. I sort of, from then to now, Tyrese going from a rookie to the leader of the team. A lot of interesting stuff in there. Feel free to read. Talk to Danny Green. Talk to Tony Bradley. Talk to Dakota Mathias. So if I can,
amazing names.
If I can track down Dakota Mathias' phone number, you could click on the story.
Yes,
it's the least
absolutely.
you can do.
Good story. For a Sixers fan over the last 10 years, one of the games that everybody remembers.
Awesome game. Such an awesome game. I don't think anybody even really remembers that they lost handily.
I didn't until I read the story.
Yeah.
I did not remember they lost.
They lost
the game.
handily, but they were down 1 at halftime, and that felt like a miracle in itself. Danny Green told while we're on this, Danny Green told me a great story about those few games where they had so few guys and Tyrese was the only ball handler, where Danny was the backup point guard, basically. And there was a game, I don't think it was the Denver one, but one right around that time, where Doc took Tyrese out of the game. Danny's the backup point guard. They throw it into Danny. The other team immediately full court presses and double teams. And Danny went over to Doc and he's like, Doc, I can't fucking do this. You have to get Tyrese back in the game. I thought that was an awesome story. I sidestepped the Joel thing. I think it's fair to point out that in the general history of the NBA, the best players on teams usually have a pretty significant vocal leadership role. And it's not as if Joel has a non-existent leadership role, but it's far beneath what you would expect of a player of his caliber. And I think it's fair to wonder if that actually makes it harder for the Sixers to reach their ceiling. I do think he needs someone like Maxey, who is probably the more front-facing star of the team at this point, because he basically plays every game, whereas you don't really know when Joel is going to play. The fact that Maxey is so good and so available and willing to shoulder that sort of leadership responsibility, I think probably makes it viable for now. But I think, again, I think that's a reasonable concern.
So you wrote a short thing in your Q&A column about whether Nick Nurse would be on the hot seat this year. I do think you made note in the column that around January of last season that the Sixers were telling anyone who would listen that Nick Nurse's job was safe.
Yeah.
I think that was, I agree that they were saying that. I think they were trying to speak that into existence. And I said that on the last pod, I think it was important for Morey not to fire Nick Nurse. I think it was important to Morey not to fire Nick Nurse. And I think it is fair after last year to say that this spun out of control, not on him. He didn't do a lot to help it, for sure.
Yeah.
But fair to say not on him. I have trouble this year, even with all of the issues that they have had, this guy available, not that guy available, not thinking that they should be better. Not thinking that they shouldn't have a point differential of essentially 0.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I have trouble. And then I'm looking at it's a different situation. And I've always said, I think there's always 4 or 5 NBA coaches who truly make a difference. Probably 5 NBA coaches who suck, and everybody else is in the middle.
That's what I've always said too.
Yes, and I think Nick is one of the ones in the middle. But, and I'm going to point out one of the guys that's in the top 5. But you look at the Celtics, and what Joe Mazzulla has done is, I think the situations are different. But like the amount of talent he lost, I mean, they lost their best player for the whole season,
and 2 other starters,
and they are like, I think their point differential is the same as last year. It's like 6. You know,
I think their offense is right. I think their offense is right about the same, losing Tatum, Porzingis, and even Drew.
And you just have to ask yourself: is like, are they maximizing everything they have? And there have been good signs, you know, that some players that have come out of nowhere. But I think that this season, you talk about Nick being on the hot seat, this season is a much bigger indictment on the job that he does than last season. Last season, I'll give him a pass on. This season, pretty tough to give him a pass on. I just think they should be better than they are. I don't think they should be great, but I think if I were to give you this is how good VJ will be, this is how good Maxey will be, this is how much Embiid will play and how good he will be when he plays, this is what Barlow will be, all of those things. Yeah. I don't think you would come up with they've given up as many points as they've scored this year.
Yeah, I think the record is not far off what I would have guessed, but I think the point differential, which usually is more indicative of how good a team is not close to where I would have guessed. And for what it's worth, in this, the question that was posed to me in the mailbag, which my most recent tweet is retweeted in the mailbag if you want to read it, was basically, is this going to be another year where they don't fire him because of injuries and suspensions and guys getting shifted around and you don't have continuity? And my point in that was basically whether this is what Nick Nurse signed up for or not, whether it's like fair to him to say, we're going to fire you because you can't handle the shifting roles constantly. Like, this is probably what it's going to look like for a while. They have Embiid under contract for 3 more years after this one. I don't think anybody anticipates him playing 65 to 70 games in a season again. And for as long as he's very good, which I think their hope is that for this entire contract extension, he'll be really good, you're going to have to shift your identity pretty drastically. Like if they have a back-to-back, from the night that he plays to the night that he doesn't the following game. And that suddenly is like the most important part of coaching the Sixers, is being able to get a team, you know, fully up to speed with 2 different game plans, 2 different identities, not just for back-to-backs, but also, I mean, we're pretty much back to the point where Joel gets ruled in or out for every game 30 minutes before, if he hasn't been listed out on the initial report. Like you got to be able to get Andre Drummond ready to go to start when on a night that if Joel plays, he's not getting off the bench. And I would be, Nurse does not always talk much in depth about like what getting a team ready for 2 different games at the same time actually entails. But I think early in the year, it looked like, wow, they really spent a whole summer dedicated to like, we are not going to be dependent on Joel because we don't know how much he's going to play or how good he's going to be. And it looked awesome. And Joel was sort of a bystander for what Tyrese and VJ and Grimes were doing. But obviously, over the last month or so, it's been back to what it used to be, where they look completely incompetent without Joel up until that Minnesota game. So I think, is it quote unquote fair to Nick Nurse if he gets fired because he couldn't manage the constant back and forth when he probably didn't think that that's what he was signing up for? I don't know if it's fair, but at that point, that would be in the best interest of the Sixers. And so I think these last couple months are going to be really pivotal for him, obviously. Like I think sort of his fate hangs in the balance here as Sixers coach. And I don't think it's worth speculating much now, because I don't think there's a decision that's been even close to made. And I think if people started hearing stuff about it, I think I would be distrusting of that information right now.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I think, like, clearly he's an accomplished coach and there's a lot on the resume. And there are successes, but I think everybody imagined him as a much different guy than what we've seen. I think there's been a lot of talk about when he got here, it was like, oh, this outside the box thinker. He ran a box and one in the NBA Finals. He had this Kawhi team. Like, that's exactly what he's going to do with Joel. And it's been a different story. And some of the more success stories have been in like player development and, empowering VJ right away with like, we're going to start you right away over Grimes. We're playing you 35 minutes, sink or swim. And obviously he's been able to swim. So I think it's really going to hinge on how these last couple months go, and maybe more specifically, whatever sort of postseason play they're in, whether that's the play-in or the playoffs.
Yeah, and this is me just speculating. I think that the Joel Embiid experience for him has been more frustrating than he guesses it would have been. I'm talking about the in and out thing. It's one thing to, and we see this with players we want and then we get them and they're not exactly what we thought. Sometimes, it's one thing from afar to say that you want this job, that player is excellent, even with all the warts, you'll take it. And it's another thing to come in and not have your best play, know whether your best player is going to play 5 minutes before every game. This is different than the Kawhi thing. It's worth noting that
that was all planned.
That was all planned. He played 60 some games. And ever since Kawhi has been a will he or won't he, that team has not thrived. They've thrived for fits and starts, but they haven't been. And I think Nurse, if you were to put him on a lie detector, would say that this is a lot harder and more frustrating than he thought it was going to be.
I agree. And I would also say, signing up to coach the reigning MVP of the league, which is what Joel was at the time Nick took this job, it becomes easier to say, he's probably missing, 15 to 20 games a year. We'll have to, build in a good backup center plan and have an idea of what we're going to look like on the games that he's out. Maybe he misses a playoff game. He usually misses at least one. But living it out every day as someone who also my life is somewhat built around what is going on with Joel between these months of the year. It's challenging. And I think even there have been times where Nick has clearly been frustrated answering questions about what's going on with Joel. And I say that as one of the people that is asking the questions about what's going on with Joel. And I don't think any of us really enjoy asking those questions, but obviously it's necessary. And I think the whole thing just becomes exhausting. And then when Joel's production, which obviously is still very good, starts to tail off from what it was the MVP year and then the following season before the meniscus, I think it all starts to add up. And then it becomes harder to justify in your head as is this all worth it? Is this all, is this really what I signed up for? Because I think all of the downsides of it seem a lot smaller until you're really in the thick of it. And then when the upside of it is not necessarily as exciting as you anticipated, it makes it even harder to stomach.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing, Sixers Adam, before we go, you're a big baseball guy, big Phillies guy.
Unfortunately.
What, so you're not a positive outlook.
Yeah, just ask the question and then
Well, what do you think your Phillies this year?
I haven't liked the lineup for 3 years. I still don't like the lineup. They have 3.5 good hitters, and the half is basically Marsh if they're facing a righty. I don't trust anything. The fact that Castellanos is not on the team is a massive plus in itself. We don't have to discuss that part of it. We've had too many Castellanos sidebar text conversations.
Yeah.
But they'll be good. I would imagine they'll make the playoffs. I do think there's a worst case scenario that exists with them now that didn't before, because the starting pitching depth is not what it was, where they're really 1.5 starting pitching injuries away from being in a tough spot. I just don't trust the depth of the lineup. I don't think Stott is ever going to be better than a league average hitter, which he never has been. I don't think there's ever going to be power from Bohm. For a team that has continually talked about how, Justin Crawford's not going to be handed anything. They've handed him the center field job. And I'm just I'm worried about the amount of pressure that's going to be on him. Adolis Garcia, again, better than Castellanos. Not that that's a high bar. Every player in the majors was last year. But you at least get someone that's good defensively in right field. But he's run an OBP below 300 2 years in a row, and it's a 300 game sample. At what point is that who he is and not who he was once 2 years ago?
Yes.
I think there are just too many question marks in the lineup. Very excited for the minor league season. Very excited for Alan Ronhill, who Do you know Alan Ronhill? Are you an Alan
Yes.
Ronhill guy?
Yep.
Love Alan Ronhill. Funky delivery, weird changeup, fastball was great in his one inning of Grapefruit League pitching the other day. They're guys that I like. I've sort of Mike has poisoned my brain where I'm sometimes more into the minor league guys than the major league guys at this point.
Well, I have Fritz. I have Fritz,
Yeah.
who is like Mike, but he actually knows about the minor league guys instead of just acting like he knows about the minor league guys.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'll see if Mike hears about it, he's going to get mad. I didn't defend him.
It's okay. It's okay. We got.
Yeah.
Well, so you're not optimistic about the Phillies. The thing
they'll be good. They'll be good. I'm just, and if you're good, you can win a World Series because it's random and you get in the playoffs and you never know what happens. Like I would argue, the 2022 Phillies on paper were not as good as 23, 24, 25. But they won the pennant. You never know. Like I'm not saying they can't win a World Series. I do not have any sort of confidence that they're going to, in part because I think the lineup becomes too easy to pitch to. There are too many guys that, like if I were an opposing manager, I would feel totally comfortable pitching to, or you put an uncomfortable matchup on them with your bullpen. Though I do like the Phillies bullpen this year. I am intrigued by some of the guys.
It's a good bullpen.
Keller's great.
It's a good. I think the thing with the Phillies is they're going to be good until they're not, and that when they're not, it's going to be quite obvious that they're not good. And it's just because of the age of the guys and how sort of thin the lineup is that they will be good, but then one year I'm afraid that they will all get old at the same time, or there will be two injuries that will obliterate them or something,
Right. And I think there's a chance that the aftermath of this era is going to be really brutal with how long some of these contracts are with, it's 7 more years of Harper, 8 more years of Turner, 5 more years of Nola. Like these are not desirable contracts. Even like, I would imagine that Kyle Schwarber, when he's a 37-year-old DH, is not going to be worth 35, however many millions of dollars he's making this year. So again, they'll be good. I would imagine they'll be in the postseason, and that's really all you can ask for. But I think it's just been years and years of mismanagement, particularly of the lineup. And I think they finally acknowledged that they didn't have enough in the lineup when they decided they were going to go for Bichette. And I just don't understand why this offseason it had to be Bichette. Like there were a bunch of big bats out there. And then, they make this push for Bichette. The Mets steal him. And then it's immediately clear, they're not going to pivot to anything else of relevance. Like it's just going to be re-signing JT now and keeping Bohm.
The thing was, they didn't go after Bichette. Bichette went after them and essentially used them. I really think that they did not. It was not about them pursuing Bichette. It was almost about Bichette coming to them and saying, "Are you interested?" And they were almost had their hand forced in it. And then
maybe,
why?
Maybe, but if you're willing to give them 7 years and $200 million, that's money that you should be willing to spend on other premium hitters.
I agree, but by the time they did it, there were no more premium hitters to spend money on.
Yeah, I just don't. If the calculus tells you in January that it would be worth finding a stopgap at catcher and dumping Bohm to give Bo Bichette 7 years, 200. Why wasn't it telling you to go after any of the other bats on the market in December? That's what I don't understand. It just feels like, first of all, it feels like years too late that they realized the offense needed some additional impact bat outside of the Turner, Harper, Schwarber trio. But it also feels like they got to that point months too late within this offseason. That's what I find frustrating, because to me, these have been very evident in their postseason outcomes for years, is the lack of a fourth bat, and the lineup is not as deep as they claim it is. And they, I remember when they were doing in this lineup, we can have Rojas for a center field defense and he could just hit ninth, and it's not an issue because this lineup is so deep. It's really not. Like Adolis Garcia might hit cleanup this year, coming off of 2 years with an OBP below 300.
Well, look, here's the good news. They got rid of one of their best postseason hitters. So, what are we going to do?
He's just not, by any measure, he's not.
But he is. Okay. But he is. Sorry, you're muted. No one can hear you. I'm sorry. Go ahead and try to talk.
I'm unmuted. No, he's not.
No, you're muted.
You can't silence me. He was never good.
Okay. He got the 2 biggest hits in the Dodger series. Okay. All right. Sixers, Adam. You can read them.
Did them a lot of good.
You can read them at Philly. Do you want me to mute you again? You can read them in Philly voice. I appreciate you filling in. Sixers Adam, great job, excellent. Sixers Adam, of course, formerly of the Ricky, now a Philly voice. Great job, buddy. Thank you for filling in. We will talk to you, I think, Sunday night after the Celtics game. So, are you down with TTP, Sixers Adam?
Yeah, Lickface.